You're listening to Psych with Mike. And remember, the book, Psych with Mike and Brett, A User's Guide to Being Human, has a ton more information in it that is corollary to the things that we talk about here on Psych with Mike. So pick up a copy and leave us a review on Amazon. That is super helpful. Subscribe to Psych with Mike on YouTube and on Apple Podcasts, and leave us a review on Apple if you would like, and that really helps out the show. And now, here's Psych with Mike. Welcome into the Psych with Mike library. I am your host, Dr. Michael Mahan. And something that you probably don't know about me, there'd be no reason for you to know this at all, but I can fall asleep in less than 1 minute. My wife actually oftentimes tells people that she thinks that I'm asleep before I turn off the light. Now, that's probably not true, but it is true that the reason that I can do that is because I have practiced that for a long time. So back in the 1990s, I was in graduate school and I took a graduate certificate in gerontology. At that time, I was thinking that gerontology was this new kind of science looking into growing older. I had never considered growing older, but I certainly could see that there was a need for people to be educated in how older people think and what their biology is, what their cognitive processes are, because the world was aging at such a rapid pace. So I was in this certificate program, and one of the things that I ended up researching extensively was Alzheimer's disease. Now, Alzheimer's disease had been known about since the 1960s and even before, but I really was first introduced to it in the 1990s while I was studying in this program. And one of the things that was astonishing to me was that we actually thought that we knew what was the cause of Alzheimer's disease, and that was aluminum toxicity. So aluminum is a neurotoxin in the brain. If you get a bunch of aluminum in your brain, it's bad for your brain, just like mercury is bad for your brain or lead is bad for your brain. But all cookware at the time was aluminum in nature because of its extensively good heat conductivity characteristics. So the theory went that because we were all cooking in aluminum and had other exposures in drinking water and all kinds of other industrial products that we consume, we were getting this aluminum in our systems, and it was causing us to develop a cognitive dysfunction called Alzheimer's disease. So everybody was talking about, okay, how are we going to fix this? How are we going to treat this? How are we going to stop people from having Alzheimer's disease? So that was when people started to coat pans with anti-stick coatings. You may think that people started coating pans because they wanted stuff not to stick, and that's probably true. But one of the biggest drivers of anti-stick coatings on cookware was to put something between the aluminum construction of the pan and your food so that you weren't consuming aluminum by knocking off molecules into your meal and then eating it. A little bit later, we started doing more and more research on Alzheimer's disease, and today the aluminum connection is pretty much debunked. The literature on aluminum and the connection to Alzheimer's disease is mixed at best, and most of the literature points to the idea that that's not a primary function or a primary causal factor of Alzheimer's disease. So then we were back to square one. If it's not aluminum, then what is it? And one of the things that started to become apparent is that there was some kind of connection between not only the amount, but the quality of sleep that people were getting and the development of these cognitive decline disorders. Nowadays, most scientists, most doctors believe that Alzheimer's disease is either caused by or significantly exacerbated by the way in which the individual sleeps. So knowing that, I decided, okay, I want my brain to work as good for as long as possible. And so what that meant for me was I wanted to train myself to be able to sleep quickly, to sleep for a complete 8 hours, and to get good restorative quality sleep as a way of protecting my brain. And at 60 and a little bit more, I would argue that I'm doing a good job. I think my brain still works pretty good. I have noticed some cognitive decline since I was 20, but for the most part, I feel pretty healthy and my brain still functions pretty well. That doesn't mean I won't get Alzheimer's or some other cognitive disorder, but at least I feel confident that I'm doing everything that I can to be able to have as good a cognitive health as possible for as long as possible. So what convinced me that sleep was this magic bullet in combating cognitive disorders? Well, one of the things that we have now learned is that your brain has a glymphatic system. Most of you probably have heard of and know about the lymphatic system. So you have a series of lymph nodes all through your body. And what the lymph nodes do is to collect toxins and then drain those to the appropriate organs in your body so that they can either be expelled or broken down. So the lymphatic system is all about breaking down the toxins that start to accumulate in your body so that it doesn't damage your cells. In the same way, the glymphatic system does that for your brain. And so the glymphatic system is controlled by neurons in your brain that actually are called glial cells that will shrink when you go to sleep so that cerebral spinal fluid can flow out of the ventricles in your brain, coat it in this neurotoxic enzyme that breaks down the neurotoxins that develop during the day and then flushes them out. And it appears that that is what causes the buildup of these negative molecules like amyloid, and that is what eventually leads to the cognitive decline. So one of the things that we know is that in studies of sleep disorders, individuals will develop more amyloid, which is the sticky kind of protein that causes the plaque tangles that we think intervene in the communication between neurons and starts to cause this progressive cognitive decline. So when you don't sleep well enough, or you don't sleep long enough, you do that over a long period of time, this lack of cleansing of the brain allows these neurotoxic substances to build up in a way where they start to cause a degradation or a decline in your cognitive ability. So what can we do to try and create a better environment for our brain to be as healthy as possible? And the simple answer to that is to sleep better. So sleep better, sleep longer, get quality sleep, and do that all of the time, as often as possible. Now, does that mean that if you have bad sleep one night that you're going to develop a neurological deterioration? No, obviously not. But chronically, so over a long period of time, that does have an impact. And the best way to actually create the foundation for good sleep is to develop what people in the industry call good sleep hygiene. So what is good sleep hygiene? Good sleep hygiene is the kind of stuff that you do to fall asleep faster, to get better sleep, and to sleep for an appropriate period of time. So if you've ever had a child and you've thought about that child's bedtime, and you've thought about creating a ritual around that child's bedtime, like, before the child goes to bed, at this time we take a nap, at this time we read a book, at this time we go to the child's bedroom and we snuggle, at this time the child goes into his or her bed, and at this time the primary caregiver leaves and the child learns to fall asleep on their own. So that is an example of sleep hygiene. You are creating a ritualized behavior that conditions the individual to expect to sleep in a certain period of time, so that when we get to that time, the individual naturally just drifts off into sleep. That's why I can fall asleep in less than 1 minute, because I have created sleep hygiene routines in my own personal life that allow me to be able to fall asleep as soon as I am ready to lay my head on the pillow. And I believe that that is going to help me to stay as cognitively nimble as I possibly can for as long as I possibly can. Remember, we have a book out, Psych with Mike and Brett, a user's guide to being human. The music that appears in Psych with Mike is written and performed by Mr. Benjamin DeClue. And as always, if it's Friday, it's Psych with Mike.